This is Defenders TV Podcast, episode 53, Daredevil Season 2, Episode 2, Dogs to a Gunfight. Welcome back, Defenders, to this episode of Daredevil Season 2, Episode 2. We're kicking off with a fight, and we're going to bring dogs to a gunfight in this episode. We are on episode 53 of Defenders TV Podcast, and I am one of your hosts, John.
And I'm your other host, Derek. We don't have Chris with us for this episode, our second episode of our Daredevil coverage, but he did sneak in just at the end for episode 1 with his thoughts, so you hopefully will have heard that by now. I'm not saying he won't sneak in with his thoughts for the second episode either before we get our edit done, so hopefully you'll hear from Chris, and soon he will be joining us at the mic for the next episode, hopefully.
He is currently winging his way all the way from the west coast of America back to little old Ireland.
That's right.
Yeah, but this episode, Derek, what did you think? For me, certainly jam-packed.
Yeah, there's tons going on. Lots of great stuff in this episode.
Loads of stuff. Loads of references to other Daredevils and a few of the other Marvel Netflix shows.
Absolutely, yeah. I always enjoyed that and really well put together episode. Lots of good stuff going on in here, and I'm really enjoying watching this new season of Daredevil.
And dare I say it, obviously we have our 5-point structure where we discuss things that we like, don't like, or maybe indifferent to. I think I have about a 5-point times 4 structure to my points for this episode. So it'll be really interesting. I just thought this was absolutely chocked full of goodness, just like a burrito.
Absolutely. We will be releasing this episode this weekend, which is the weekend of release for Daredevil, and we will be moving back to a more structured release.
Sedate, I think you'll find.
It's probably sedate, yes. A more sedate release structure from this episode onwards. We'll be obviously covering our Agent Carter and finishing off that series. We've got 3 more episodes of that to go. So probably get 1 episode of Daredevil and 1 episode of Agent Carter out every week. If you want to make sure that you get all of the episodes as they're released, make sure you subscribe to us on iTunes by just going through our direct link at defenderstvpodcast.com/iTunes. Or if you're not an iTunes person, if you're more of an Android person like myself, you can subscribe in any good or evil podcast catcher, like Stitcher, like Beyond Pod, like Podcast Addicts. Just search for Defenders TV Podcast. And once you've subscribed, we will arrive in your ears as soon as we release an episode.
And of course, with it now being Friday, the 18th of March, Marvel Netflix have released this globally Daredevil Season 2 to all and sunder for their absolute enjoyment and watchful glee. So, of course, now if you have any feedback, what are your thoughts on these episodes? We would really love to hear that. Please send it into feedback@defenderstvpodcast.com. We have a spoiler-filled discussion section of our Facebook group, so you can join there and discuss away. It will all be spoiler filled, but it'll all be within a separate area of the Facebook feed. But just search Defenders TV Podcast and join us there and let us continue on the conversation, both from the podcast and into Facebook, as now we can watch all 13 episodes of Season 2 of Daredevil. Of course, we can't, because Derek will, of course, have the PIN code for the TV and will put his parent blocking on for both myself and Chris.
That's right. The way we cover our episodes is that we watch 1 episode of the season of Daredevil on Netflix at a time, and once we finished watching it, we then record the podcast before we watch the next episode. So that means we come up with some interesting theories about things that may happen for characters who usually die the episode after we come up with a big theory for them. So look forward to that, listeners. If you do want to share with us your thoughts on feedback, just make sure you mark it with the episode number you're speaking about. Any feedback about the full series, just mark it with that, and we'll talk about it at the end of the show at the 13th episode. So we'd love to get feedback on the episodes as you're watching them, as John mentioned.
Absolutely. Just search Defenders TV Podcast on Facebook. Join our group, follow the page that we have as well. And of course, you can find us on Twitter at DefendersCast. Please come and join in the fun. It'd be great to have you. But I think with that, Derek, what do you have for us on this episode? What are the production notes for this episode 2?
I don't want to read the production notes because there's so many people involved in this show. I was looking at them on IMDb and looking at them as we were watching the episodes. There's so many people involved in making this series as special as it is. So what I will call out is that the episode itself was written again by our new showrunners, Marco Ramirez and Doug Petrie. Great to have them involved in the first 2 episodes of the series, and also directed by Phil Abram, who directed the first episode of this season and the first 2 episodes of season 1. So, much the same people involved in this episode. Really good to have them involved in structuring the series and the setup for the show. So, John, do you want to tell us what they gave us this time?
Sure. Foggy Nelson searches for his best friend Matt Murdock on the rooftops of Hell's Kitchen, leading to the opening of old wounds between the pair. The vigilante nicknamed Punisher by the cops goes on a shopping trip to pick up a police radio so he can step up his plan to take down the criminals of New York City. Meanwhile, Matt returns to Melvin Potter, the gladiator, to improve his suit and protect him from further punishment. Foggy also negotiates for survivor Grotto to enter the witness protection program with the district attorney, Samantha Reyes, in exchange for using Grotto to build a case against a drug leader called Edgar Brass. However, as the wiretap plan is put into action, another plan unexpectedly takes place from the DA's office as her ulterior motives for Nelson and Murdock's client are revealed as an attempt is made by the New York PD to draw out the bloody vigilante known as the Punisher. Yeah, so, this to me was, had so much going on in it. Really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But I think, Derek, what is your first juicy point for this episode?
I really just like the opening of this episode. It's really Foggy-centric, I think, in a lot of times. What I love is that Foggy's looking for Matt's body, and, he gets the idea of where Matt could be left after his attack by the Punisher, or after the Punisher attacked him, from overhearing the speakers that the police have saying that there were shots fired on the roof of the tenements in the local area in Hell's Kitchen.
Very Daredevil-esque almost, listening in to the police radio.
Absolutely, yeah. And what kind of gets me in the fact that Foggy goes and saves Daredevil, is that obviously last season Foggy had only just found out about him. He's now protecting Daredevil's identity, and he's also supporting him. And what we see here, by having this kind of sidekick in Foggy Nelson, is that Daredevil wouldn't have survived this. He was bleeding out on the roof. He'd been shot. What it looked like he was bleeding out. I think what we learn later on is that the mask did protect him. He didn't actually get a bullet to the head, which was really lucky.
Well, he did, but he got a bullet to the mask.
Exactly.
I think I said that I thought it looked like he had caught it, almost taken it out of the air with his super duper sensory skills. But no, it actually hit him square on the temple.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do like the fact that Foggy's using really strange excuses to get into all the flats in the area. He says he lost his keys in the first one, then he says his kids locked him out, and the guy goes, "Are you some kind of idiot?" And Foggy goes, "Yes."
Yeah, no, anything for the cause.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah,
absolutely. But I like how active again they're making Foggy in this season. That's really nice to see him being a central part of the team now. This is a team of the Daredevil crew, basically.
Absolutely
can't work alone.
Yeah, and actually that feeds into my first point really as well, which again, the transition from the end of episode 1 there immediately into episode 2, it is almost like seamless. It goes through really, really well, and I really like and completely agree with what you're saying there, that Foggy is part of the team, and I love that Foggy starts questioning Matt as those old wounds open, but in a different way, rather than "why didn't you tell me about being Daredevil and this vigilante?" It's now, you have to stop being the Daredevil.
Yeah.
And it's almost as though he's trying to say, look, trust me to do my job, he says back at the apartment, trust the DA's office and so on. He's making the point is like, you're not the only one who helps. I'm part of this team. Let me do this. You need to now rest, take a break. And it's like, he's questioning the fact that not everyone now is a crook in this city. Yes, under Wilson Fisk, there was corruption throughout the public life in New York City and through Hell's Kitchen. But you hear from Karen now that a lot of those were taken down with Fisk when he was brought to court and brought to trial by Nelson and Murdock. Avocados at law, So we really do see that Foggy's trying to get Daredevil, get Matt Murdock out of this paranoia a bit, and out of this obsession that it's only him. And it really feeds nicely into other things that Karen says later on, which I won't just say now, but I really liked this whole thing from Foggy. I think it's kind of summed up with Matt saying, can I get an aspirin? And he says, well, do you want an X-ray or a psych evaluation? Like, he's really questioning Matt's choices, his need that he needs to rest and consider putting this costume back in whatever wacko box it comes out of. Yeah. Like, he's really saying, he's covering for him and he's hurting himself, and there's only so many times that, he can keep covering for him. What if we were caught coming back from the rooftop, you in that costume? What happens when Karen, who I think inevitably is going to find out, or she's going to put the pieces together herself? Yeah. What is going to happen? And I love this whole questioning of the secrecy that Matt Murdock, is wanting to retain. Understandably, but it's by one of his own team members now.
Yeah. But I do love how supportive Foggy also is of him at the time. It's not like he's telling him he's going to walk away if he doesn't get rid of the outfit. He's telling him that he's here for him. He's going to support him. He's got to take care of himself. He's got to get himself better before he goes out and fights, because other people can do the fighting for him as well. It's really good touches to kind of show that balance between the two of them, that they are friends. He does support him, but he can't live like this worrying about him all the time.
And I think as well, Foggy bookends this episode with running across at the start the roofs of Hell's Kitchen to find his friend who he knows is in trouble. Mm-hmm. And he does it again at the end of the episode, after the trap sprung by the DA's office, right, which obviously we'll come to later. But it's a really nice kind of framing of this episode, which I think really does have Foggy in one of his most central roles in Daredevil, actually. And I really, really enjoyed it. Yes. I'm really loving how Foggy is coming out of the mist and the shell of this show, and really becoming part of Daredevil's team, and Nelson and Murdock's advocates of law. And that he's really stepping up to the mark as a lawyer as well. And that element and that side of this show, really, really like it.
Yeah, which is my second point. So good lead in there, John. I love Foggy standing up to the DA, Samantha Reyes. Yeah, really, really good to see Samantha Reyes back. She was in the final episode of Jessica Jones, on the opposing side of the table with Hogarth and Jessica after the big moment at the end of the season of Jessica Jones, which I'm still unsure whether we can spoil on the Daredevil podcast. In case you haven't watched Jessica Jones, go watch it. There's some great stuff in there, and a great first nod here that Samantha Reyes was the DA in Jessica Jones. She's obviously the DA in the New York area. So it's great to see that crossover already. But I love seeing Foggy stand up to her, and really well. He's showing off his strength as a character. He's certainly no shrinking violet in this show. He's very confident in his abilities as a lawyer, which I really enjoy. It's good to have him be a character that isn't super powered, but does have this ability in the law and is going to use it to get his own way and get things done, really, in this episode. Really good moment between the two of them. And I love a great moment in the scene is just Karen in the background, showing so much pride at Foggy. It's great. You can just see her taking on board that her best friend, one of her best friends anyway, is really stepping up to the mark and really not shrinking away from this more powerful person in his presence, that he's showing off what he can do and his abilities in front of the DA of New York, which is really good. Really good.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, we hear Edgar Brass's name mentioned for the first time here, about getting Grotto, as part of the witness protection scheme here, that, the exchange for that is that he gives all the information he can about his previous work, but also helps to sort of ensnare and trap this drug cartel leader of going by the name of Edgar Brass, which is interesting because obviously from the first episode we have elements from the takedown of the Irish American gang. We have this missing hand from the scene. We have the mobile phone call that we called out in one of the dead bodies right after the massacre by the Punisher. And that Nesbitt was wearing a flak jacket to his own club. Yeah. Sort of, there is trouble brewing here. But who is Edgar Brass? He's not Brannigan. This is another sort of crook that's entering into the fray. Is it a real person? Is it maybe someone with a pseudonym or something? A cover here. Almost a bit like Wilson Fisk. So it'll be really interesting to see who this Edgar Brass may or may not actually turn out to be, or is it just a cover by the cops almost?
Maybe. And I like the fact that the DA is saying that that's the only way that Grotto is going to get out of this situation if they give them Brass. And Foggy does mention that the feds will give exactly the same offer to him. So Brass must be someone very important to the show. It'll be interesting to see who he is in the future. We didn't actually get to see him in this episode, so it'll be interesting to see who he is in the future. One call out from after last week's episode, we didn't do as many Easter eggs as we probably normally would because Chris wasn't here. But one of the little Easter eggs that I did really like after watching the episode was that Grotto himself is from the comic books, and he's actually a partner of Turk Barrett. He did partner up with Turk quite a lot in the comic books, and a couple of his appearances in the Daredevil comic books came from the Frank Miller era of Daredevil, as so much of this show has in the past. But it's quite interesting that Grotto is also a character in the comic books. And I'm wondering if the two of them will team up in future if Turk Barrett gets back out of prison. Will him and Grotto team up?
Yeah, it would be really nice to see sort of the two lovable criminals kind of working together, in that sense. That would be a really cool little thing to have going on sort of, around the sidelines, definitely.
Absolutely. John, do you want to give us your next point?
Yeah, I think it kind of links in with Karen's pride, but Karen gets a good deal of storyline here, which I really liked. And I think the angle for me is kind of, as I've already said, she's a clever girl. Don't take me as an idiot, I think she says to Matt when she's round at his apartment. But it's the copycats, or what the devil worshippers as they're known, these people who are taking on the mantle of Daredevil. It's called out by Officer Brett Mahoney, in the police precinct, and it's kind of the thing then later on that Karen picks up in Matt's apartment, where she really goes, the Punisher was inevitable. This man, as she's reporting back to Matt the whole thing that went down with the DA surrounding Grotto, she goes, the Punisher was inevitable. She sees the straight line from Daredevil to the Punisher. There's all these other people that are doing it or trying to do it, but not quite so well. But here's the Punisher. He's doing exactly what Daredevil is doing. And she makes the point that Daredevil's actions open the door to men like this. Men that think they are the law and that the law doesn't matter to them. And she says she doesn't see the difference now between Daredevil and the Punisher. They are the same. Okay, one has more violent methods than the other, but nonetheless, it's what they're doing. They feel that they are judge, jury, executioner, or judge, jury, and chucks it into the police precinct after he's beaten them up quite heavily. Yeah. So this I really liked. This coming from Karen, and I think that it was done in the apartment where you do get the sense that she's starting to not believe all of Foggy's excuses that, he's fallen down the stairs, he's walked into a door, that he's a heavy drinker, and all of this. She's beginning to suspect something, I think, because she does say, she might still accept that he's an alcoholic and a heavy drinker, but I think towards the end, she sees Foggy running frantic, as Daredevil is caught in the DA's trap. And I think maybe, does that start the change in it of, well, why is Foggy so concerned about Daredevil? Does he know him? And obviously then making that leap to, is it Matt Murdock? I loved all this interaction between Karen and Matt Murdock.
Yeah.
But also, with regards to these devil worshippers and copycats.
Absolutely, yeah. One of the things I did like about that interaction between Karen and Matt is that Matt's trying to defend Daredevil and what he does as opposed to what Punisher's doing. And it's quite interesting because Karen doesn't have the frame of reference to know that he is Daredevil. So when he's given her excuses like, well, Daredevil doesn't kill anybody, she goes, well, not that we know of. So how can you fight against that? How can you have that argument with somebody that doesn't know for definite that Daredevil is not a murderer because they don't know anything?
Absolutely.
And she assumes that Matt has that same level of knowledge about Daredevil as everybody else in the city, you know? So he's trying to be defensive, yet she can only see it from her perspective, which is, well, maybe he did kill people and we just don't know. It wasn't reported on.
Yeah, and I mean, she makes the point that, you know, everyone has cheered on Daredevil, and now all of a sudden people are doing exactly what he does, but they're not just leaving them outside of a court or a police station. They're killing them. Or, you know, all of this is now starting to sort of take its toll. And I think from Karen as well, she's coming at it from, you know, she has that moment where there's the survivor's guilt element where, you know, after the DA's meeting, she sat looking through the morgue reports on all the people that the Punisher has killed. And, you know, she's doing some searches on them and so on. But she says to Foggy, you know, I should have been one of those in the morgue. Yeah. I should have been one of those reports. You know, it's that I attracted Wilson Fisk's attention to come after me, and now I've been shot at, and this guy, the Punisher, is coming after me. And this, I think, is all fueling that now, this aspect that, well, maybe Daredevil is also one of these people.
Yeah.
Just in different clothing. I mean, we have the fact that Fisk and Daredevil had the same idea, at least up until the very last episode of, this is my city, I want to save it.
Yeah.
Obviously, that turned out to be a bit of a charade for Fisk, but nonetheless, again, she doesn't know that conversation. All the reports she saw was about Wilson Fisk wanting to save his city, to pull it out of the mess that it was in. Exactly.
No, really good point.
Derek, what's your next point?
My next point is entitled "Poor Stupid Pawn Shop Owner."
Yeah.
Really like this scene, our second proper introduction to Frank Castle. He actually gets more lines than Bang this time, which is good. He's very, very knowledgeable about exactly what he wants from this pawn shop owner, showing the training that he has, showing that he is coming from a military background and is trying to investigate and do something using the police scanners effectively that he's trying to buy off the pawn shop owner. But I love how the scene plays out, where he is so gruff with the pawn shop owner. He knows he just wants to use him to get this piece of equipment. I'm not too sure whether Frank was ever actually going to walk out of that pawn shop without killing the pawn shop owner. But I like that they've kind of used it as a way of showing that Frank Castle isn't all bad. He will do something to protect the innocents in his mind, whatever that may be, as the pawn shop owner calls out that he's going to sell him some porn of varying types, and that makes Frank snap and take the baseball bat to his head.
Well, it says it's underage porn, basically.
Yeah, as it's going worse and worse and deeper when Frank snaps. Really like that touch because, you know, Frank is a hero in the Marvel universe. You know, he's not a villain. While he does come across as a villain to people that don't agree with his methods, he has a belief in himself that he's not a villain. He's taking out bad guys and putting them down. So that's where the pawn shop owner gets his comeuppance, because he has now told Frank Castle that he is genuinely a bad guy. He's not just a guy who owns a shop that sells bad things. He's a bad guy himself.
Yeah, he's trading in child pornography, essentially, underage pornography. And I mean, I think he was going to walk out, and I think it wasn't until then that it snapped for him.
Yeah.
So I actually would have thought he would have walked out, because he was being very methodical anyway about, give me the gun, or at least give me the cartridges. here's some money, give me the videotape, and here's the money for obviously the tactical radio, the NYPD mobile communications, device. And like all of that was playing out, and it was even so much that it supports your theory that he is good, but it was that, he will only harm those people that are genuinely deserving of it. And at the mention of all of that, he suddenly became genuinely deserving of the wrath of the Punisher, And this is Punisher baseball, as he picks up the bat. And I mean, quite frankly, it's probably more exciting than, real life baseball.
I don't think I want to watch it though, to be honest.
No, I don't want to watch it. I like the fact that it was off camera. This was the violent button being pushed, for the Punisher. But it shows that he does have a trigger mechanism. He is not just, an out and out, psychopath who will, spreads the bullets around and doesn't care who he kills. There is this, mode of operations that he has, which is hugely tactical.
That is true.
And there is a code, I suppose, that he works to.
Yeah, no, I do agree with you. I do agree with the point. I think it was just more the disdain of Frank having to deal with this person is what was coming across at the start. You're probably right. He was going to leave him alive when he was walking out of the shop, but it was kind of a, just give me a reason almost is the feeling I had. It was kind of I am going to leave you alive, but stop talking. And if you keep talking, you're dead. Basically, that's kind of what it was. The Nazi symbol on his neck means that I don't really have much love lost there for the death of this guy.
No, absolutely. I didn't actually even spot that first off. And then, obviously, there you go. Bit of a nasty chap.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
John, do you want to take us on to your next point?
Yeah. Speaking of Easter eggs, my kind of next point is I think we might have the Punisher's dog, Max. We might have Max the dog. And I love not only that we have Max the dog, but I also love the way he was introduced by Daredevil returning to the scene of the massacre of the Irish, and tracking the dog by almost like as a tracker dog. You need a tracker dog to track a dog. I don't know whether he did it all by smell and scent. I think there was also a bit of maybe getting the waves of blood sound coming. I don't know, but for me, this was like a bloodhound on the trail, going for a really nifty way of finding where the base of operations is of the Punisher. And he finds it, and there is little Max, rescued, the fighting dog, rescued from any future dog fights. Again, it shows the tender, loving, caring side of the Punisher as well. But he finds this safe house of the Punisher. You have the radio that's he bought earlier from the pawn shop, and we also have Daredevil back in black.
That's right. Yeah. Really good to have him back in his old black. His suit has only lasted one episode so far, which is quite interesting. I'm not too sure about Matt's tracking back of the dog. Now, I know he wasn't called out as Max, but I'm assuming, knowing that the comic books does have Punisher and his dog, and Punisher is quite well known as being very caring for his animal, as well. It's quite cool to have that little touch in there. I don't know whether we're going to see the dog very often in future, or whether he's abandoned this particular safe house that he has. But yeah, I'm not too sure about how Matt tracked down the dog, especially because there is a scene in while he's tracking him where someone's washing down the street, where the blood that he has been following so far to lead him to the dog is obviously being washed away. So I don't really know how Daredevil followed that trail after that point. But look, it's a TV show. I'll give it a bit of leeway. Those things happen sometimes. He is superpowered, so there is a possibility he's still able to track it, even though it's being washed down.
But he was only washing down a little bit of pavement outside of his house. So if the dog was bleeding, because he has a little plaster on his head, which looks all very cute. He's snorting away as only bulldogs or whatever type of, what is it, bulldog? It looks like a bulldog. It breathes like a bulldog, and so it's, he has a little plaster, so he has been bleeding. So, he could have picked up the trail further on. It wasn't like this guy was washing down the whole of New York City.
Of course. That would take a lot of water.
Yeah.
And when it's 100-degree temperatures outside, you don't want to be wasting that much water. You wouldn't be able to do this in LA anyway.
No. Hosepipe bands.
Absolutely.
But Derek, what is your next point?
Speaking of Daredevil's suit, and the fact that it only lasted one episode, we get our return appearance of Melvin Potter, the gladiator, our suit builder for Daredevil. Great to see him back. Really good interplay between the two of them. I like that they've struck a deal between the two of them where Melvin says, we're here to keep each other safe, right? That's our deal. You keep me safe from being attacked. He says all his old clients are coming around to him to fix his suits and he's no longer working for them. He's been refusing them, but he will work for Daredevil and will build his brand new suit, which is really interesting. I'm looking forward to a suit upgrade, and I like the fact that we've got Melvin Potter in as another member of the Daredevil team.
Yeah, I like the idea. The deal is we keep each other safe. I like the fact as well that Melvin kind of calls out Matt, and in the same way that Foggy did, he goes, I promised Betsy I wouldn't do anything illegal. He's been turning down his older clients.
Yeah.
And Matt is going, well, I'm not a criminal. But he still calls out, you don't have a badge. And it's the same thing that Karen is saying. Yeah. I like this notion that the people around him, that even people who are almost part of the Daredevil team are questioning some of the things he's doing, that maybe he's getting too deep into this. I love that notion that's coming through for me from this.
And definitely when there's another vigilante in the city, they're starting to compare him to Daredevil and trying to see, is Daredevil doing the right thing or not? That's quite cool. That's quite a good.
Yeah,
good
and
touch.
I mean, Melvin's as well is like, this needs replacing. This is like an eggshell now. The integrity of the helmet is completely shot to bits.
Yeah.
Now. So I really like this. But he still needs it and asks for a repair as well as a replacement. And I love later on when you see the repair, it's like, it's where you, I suppose, would expect the scar to be on Matt Murdock's temple and forehead. Really, really enjoys just how sort of it made the face mask look different.
Yeah.
And a bit creepier, actually. Almost felt a bit like Whitney Frost's sort of cracking face and that kind of notion of a mask as well. So I really liked it.
And I still can't believe that you don't use Frost's face fissure when you say that every time.
But it is Frost's face fissure, and that's because I can't say it quickly enough.
That's very true. That's very true. Do you want to take us on to your next point, John?
Yeah, my next one is Dogs of Hell are taken down again. This is like the second attack on the Dogs of Hell, but I really like the little gag in there with the guy hosing down the truck that's been taken out. You've seen some bloody mess of a guy who's dead, like taken off, probably to be put into sausages or something somewhere. And here we then have wash it down, we'll use the truck for parts. Mm-hmm. And of course the guy's got his earmuffs on as he's hosing the inside of the cabin and the outside. And you just hear the blasts of the gunfire going off in the back, and he's kind of like, what's going on with my jet wash? And then it's like, yeah, he gets taken down. Really, really like this. I was thinking it was really interesting that it was a water jet gag for this. Just because I know, a similar kind of hose has just done an advert for Ghostbusters, like for removing, so I'm like going, oh my God, I'd like the marketing people moving, jet washers, water jet washers and cleaners, into the world of comic books and films. But I love this gag. I just thought it was neat. It was great just seeing Frank Castle there at the end with all the blood splatters. And the guy who's washing down the cabin doesn't realize it until like there's this huge like splat of blood against where he's just cleaned. Yeah. And this guy falls into the side of the truck as well. So like this was just a nice little nod. And of course he uses that truck then later on to obviously reveal where the location of the NYPD SWAT team.
Yeah, I absolutely love the scene. So if you absolutely positively have to clear up every piece of blood that's been left behind after you've killed someone, get a car shirt and washer. Is that basically the new ad? Yeah,
something like that. Yeah,
probably sold by Samuel L. Jackson as well.
But you can also just remove dirt, grime, and moss from your paving stones.
Very true, very true. Murdock pointed a little bit of a quick one. I love that we've got the name The Punisher in this episode. This is that he's already been given this as his title by the cops and by the district attorney's office, effectively. He's not called Frank within the episode at all. He is the Punisher straight off the bat. It's not something that's coming from Daredevil's team or anything like that, or from Matt. This is actually the title he's been given by the people that agree with him, really. We're told during this episode that by Mahoney that the NYPD is split in half. Half of them believe that what he's doing is the right thing, and half of them believe that he's not. So I'm presuming that they're calling him the Punisher in a really positive way, almost saying that he is punishing the criminals for what they've done. Just quite interesting that it's already come up. There's no other detail behind him. There's no other nickname assigned to him, that they've assigned the name The Punisher to him. That's quite cool.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like the fact that there's no backstory. I mean, we may get to hear some of the motives from him at a later time, but, there is no need. It fits neatly and really nicely into the Daredevil story arc that we're seeing so far. Mm-hmm. So, this is really good. Yeah. I mean, definitely loved the shout out that it was just the Punisher, that they're profiling this guy. It's military and tactical precision, but that his targets are absolutely chosen, and there is a rationale behind who he's picking in terms of these gang leaders and just gang members as well. And that the initial tag for him is the Punisher. Yeah. So really good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know there was some talk, sometime during the winter period, basically in between Jessica Jones and Daredevil, when obviously the discussions were going on about what we'd see from the Punisher. A lot of discussions about the Punisher getting his own show and possibly getting his own Netflix series. I'm not too sure whether that's needed. I think so far we're getting the origin story of the Punisher. I think we're going to get it anyway, coming up in this season of Daredevil. So I'm pretty sure that this is going to take the kind of tack that it was taken last year with Kingpin, where we're going to get a very Punisher-centric episodes coming up throughout this season. It won't be, to me, I don't think it's going to be like Luke Cage was in Jessica Jones, where he was just a supporting character and you didn't get any of his backstory, really. I think this is going to be much more. You're going to see a lot more of the Punisher in this series to complement the story of Daredevil unfolding as well. So
absolutely. And I mean, that would fit with some of the stories in the comics as well, definitely.
So I'd say maybe towards the end of the season, we'll see what we know of Punisher and Frank Castle. I'm loving Jon Bernthal's portrayal of the Punisher. I really do like how gruff and how right on point he is for the Frank Castle we know from the comics. Really, really good job. So definitely wouldn't be opposed to seeing a Punisher show in the future, but I'm kind of intrigued to see how they're going to handle him in Daredevil first and see how it plays out over the 13 episodes anyway. And we did get a bit of feedback on this point this morning while watching episode 2 from Nick Watches Marvel over on Twitter. He says, I had a thought. What if Punisher eventually becomes a defender? The trailers foreshadow DD, Elektra, and Punisher fighting the Hand together.
That would be a great thing, that the Punisher really becomes the immoral center for the Defenders, and actually has to be reined back by maybe Daredevil and a few of the others, like Luke Cage, to really stay disciplined and stay on board. I say that knowing that he's also a very disciplined soldier. So, I mean, this would be really cool, I reckon.
He'd almost be like the Hulk of the Defenders, where they just point him at a target and he takes them out, and then they have some way of calming him down or getting him back and reining him in,
But he's also the tactical mastermind as well for them. Yeah. Really allows them to be in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yep. Thanks for the feedback, Nick. Really good for you to send it in.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the feedback. Yeah.
John, do you want to take us on to your last point?
Yeah, it's round 2 of the Battle Royale.
Oh, yes.
We left it at the end of episode 1, and now we pick it up here after the trap being sprung against the Punisher sort of fails. I love just how the truck that contains the washdown guy, One-Eyed Jack from the Dogs of Hell compound. I love the fact that he's used by the Punisher. He's strapped up to the wheel. But the fight on top of the roof between Daredevil and Punisher, again, Daredevil comes in right at the wrong moment for the Punisher to really stop him from taken out either the SWAT team or at least Grotto. And the fight up on the roof is really, really good. I mean, you've got the Punisher using the nunchucks, you've got Daredevil using the nunchucks, you've got some really great beatdowns, and it's all being done in the context of all these bullets flying around from the NYPD SWAT team, which, I mean, these guys are really bad shots. They are really terrible. Bad, terrible shots. But thank God they are, because they give a great backdrop to this fantastic rooftop fight between the two of them. I mean, it's really visceral, it's really raw, and I really like that of the Punisher and what he's bringing to these fights. It's proper, just punches, blocks, and he's willing to use anything around him, including, his adversary's own weapons against them. So I really like that. I love how the water tower was riddled with bullets and starts spraying down water as well. I mean, it was really, really cool. And then you end it where they fall through the roof light. And I love the way they're circling one another like the dogs at the dogfight, where Max has been rescued from. And really trying to get a measure of each other. And then we had it earlier in the episode where the bullet to the head seems to have messed with Matt's senses. You know, he suddenly becomes very oversensitive to noise. He gets a loss of precision. He can't catch the glass as it falls in his apartment. His nose starts to run with blood, and it's almost like he goes deaf temporarily. Mm-hmm. And this suddenly all starts coming back, whilst he's circling, sort of trying to measure the Punisher, and presumably the Punisher takes his opportunity, because all we see then is a Salvador Dali type stroke of blood across the floor, and both of them have disappeared. Foggy, frantic, because he's seen it all going down on videotape back at the mobile HQ.
Yeah, absolutely. This was also my final point, because it's obviously the big moment in the episode. I did like the fact that they kind of depowered Matt, because it's very important that Matt is a superpowered individual in the show. He got hit by the radioactive material in season 1. That's why he's got some of the powers with heightened senses and heightened abilities. And the Punisher isn't a superpowered being. He doesn't have any heightened abilities. He's just got amazing training. But I like the fact that they did depower Matt for this fight with the Punisher. It's a nice way of doing it. They do it always in the Marvel comics, where there is a battle between your two heroes, or your hero and your villain. And if they aren't on a level playing field, it can be very one-sided. So I like that they chose this concept early on in the episode to show that Matt's not at his best. His suit isn't up to snuff at the moment. He's also been damaged in the last fight with Punisher, and it's now leading to him not to be as good with his senses this time as he was in the previous fight. So I like that little touch to kind of depower him. Also, a big shout out to Eric Linden, who does the stunt doubling for Jon Bernthal's Punisher in this season. So we now have Chris Brewster, who does Daredevil, versus Eric Linden, who does the Punisher in their fight. I mentioned in the last episode about the fact that they both have very specific fighting styles taking on each other. It's like mixed martial arts almost.
Absolutely.
They are using the ability of a stronger, bigger man versus a faster, trained, professional, and I like the fact that they've used these two different styles against each other. It's great to see it on screen again. Brilliant job from the stunt crew. I don't think it needs to be said. We'll probably say it every episode, though, because they're doing a great job.
I mean, the other thing about this is I really do like the dodgy DA of Samantha Reyes. I mean, okay, she might not be dodgy as such, but I mean, she's been pretty underhand with Foggy. We see her earlier on where she's essentially got zero respect for Foggy. Mm-hmm. She's really talking him down. And here that they've absolutely kept them in the dark as to this trap that they're trying to do, which is not for Edgar Brass. And that's the thing. Is it presumably that whilst Edgar Brass is a known sort of drug runner and cartel leader, that, it's a bit of a red herring here, that he's really not that much on the radar of the NYPD and the DA.
Was he ever actually going to be there to meet Grotto, or is this just purely a setup to pull out the Punisher,
Pure setup, it looks like, absolutely. She's pretty underhand, and, this is more like witness non-protection, really. I mean, I wouldn't want to go into that kind of protection outfit if you have to put yourself in harm's way and be the bait. So this was, this trap for the Punisher, it does put questions onto Samantha Reyes, which maybe we'll see more of, in this series. And it will be interesting to see how that all plays out. Is Edgar Brass just this red herring, or will he play out over the course of the season?
Yeah, it'd be very interesting to see. Well, that's our top 5 points for the episode. John, do you have any notes?
I do. I love the nods to Jessica Jones in here. We have Samantha Reyes as the DA. She was there in, as you said, the final episode of Jessica Jones,
That's
Smile,
right.
aka Smile. But we also have a nod to the deceased Detective Clemens by Officer Mahoney. And great little line saying, Clemens used to say, treat them like mushrooms, feed them shit, and keep them in the dark, with regards to the perpetrators. You've got Grotto in the interrogation room. It's like, really need to keep him undercover and not knowing anything, so that he gives us everything.
Yeah.
He grows in that
really
way.
good, isn't
I
it?
really like those 2 nods to Jessica Jones, and of course, obviously, just the nod back to season 1 with Melvin, the gladiator. Really good to see that as well.
I'm sure I did see his Stiltman outfit still in the background of his
I thought so
fight.
too, yeah, definitely. So that's one of my notes.
Cool. I have 2 quick notes as well. I like that Foggy says to Karen not to go out during the battle, because this place is about to become a war zone. Obviously, one of the most well-known Punisher comic books is Punisher Warzone.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Nice little touch there. One of the other things I caught during the episode is the inappropriate banter of Karen and Foggy as well. I just thought there was some really funny moments where, Foggy's looking really nervous about to approach the DA, and he says to Karen, "How do I look?" And she goes, "Moderately presentable," and then goes, "Oh no, sorry, I didn't mean to make you more nervous." A bit later on, they're talking to Grotto, and Grotto says, "I'm going to be okay here," and Foggy says, "Just don't say anything incriminating and you'll be okay." And he goes, but does that mean I'm going to get arrested if I say anything incriminating? He's like, "No, I was only joking with you, I like that the 2 of them are terrible at judging when they can tell jokes to somebody else and when not, They have one other one where Foggy is also talking to Grotto and says, "This offer's open till midnight tonight. After that, it turns into the great pumpkin Charlie Brown," kind of congratulating himself almost on the fact that he's got a little reference to Charlie Brown in there. And Grotto looks at him really nervously and goes, "What are you talking about? What does that mean? What does it actually mean?" So I love this little banter between those 2 and other characters around them, where they just can't judge when to tell a joke and when not to. Really good fun.
Yeah, no, I think the banter between Karen and Foggy is really good. And I actually think, what's going to happen when Karen finds out about Daredevil. This banter between Foggy and Karen, when she realizes that he's been lying to her and covering for Matt, will she be able to forgive Foggy, or will there be some lingering resentment for a few episodes? I suppose another note that I would have, which is kind of connected to this, is that she does kind of say that when you're ready to tell me what it is you can't at the moment, I hope you do. And Matt does say yes. Now, she's thinking about heavy drinking, and all the scars and bumps and knocks that he's getting. But maybe Matt is thinking about, him telling her that he is the vigilante Daredevil, and that, he wants this Karen brought into that fold, because ultimately that relationship is part of his weakness in the comics with regards to his enemies, that they can hone in on that. So it'll be really interesting to see that relationship develop between them. But with that then, Derek, do you defend this episode of Daredevil?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I really enjoyed this episode. I'm really liking this early part of the season. I'm liking the fact that we're getting a setup story for the Punisher. We're getting more details about him. They're working them quite well side by side. The team of Daredevil that we know from season 1 and this new team that we're getting in season 2. Really enjoyed the nods to Jessica Jones. Having Reyes in there was really good. Really enjoying this episode. And just, again, 2 episodes in a row having a battle between Daredevil and the Punisher, and a great one, a really epic fight in the water as they beat each other with the billy clubs. It was really, really good to see. So I definitely defend this episode. John, do you defend this episode of Daredevil?
I do defend this episode of Daredevil. You'll be unsurprised to hear. I'm going to definitely give this 4.5 bloody baseball bats out of 5. For me, again, I'm loving how we got a great fight sequence with Punisher and Daredevil again at the end. Loved it. But importantly, I'm loving how the characters around Daredevil are responding to him as Daredevil or as Matt. And Foggy, for me, without question, Foggy Nelson in this episode was really good. I loved how he looked out for him, but was also questioning him. I loved how he stood up to the DA. But also, had that relationship with Karen, as you said, where he's really, that awkwardness is still there from the first season.
Yeah.
And I'm really liking how then with Matt Murdock, Karen is asking him to open up. She's wanting that relationship, but she's also aware that, something's going on. Now, she thinks it's drink, but maybe by the end of this episode, she's really starting to think that it's something else. Maybe. Certainly given Foggy's reaction to seeing Daredevil and running out into that war zone. Yeah. So I really like those kind of relationships and how they've developed since season 1 and how they're being really put front and central. Season 1 was very much about Daredevil's story, and now this is Daredevil and Matt's story with his friends and enemies as well.
Yeah.
So that I really, really enjoyed. I love the nods, as you said, to the to season 1 of Daredevil with Melvin Potter coming back. I love the nods to Jessica Jones, having that consistency of characters coming in. Yeah. We get the Punisher call out. We have the Devil Worshippers call out. Again, this idea of vigilante. When has it gone too far? Mm-hmm. Almost a Batman type sort of questions being brought here. And then we have, a little sneak peek into the world of Frank Castle in that pawn shop where he's getting the radio device, and we have that baseball bat incident. Like, I really, really liked it. And maybe we've also got Max the dog, which is going to be interesting to see as well. So to me, this is fantastic. I really can't wait to see where the Punisher has taken Daredevil. I presume it's to that chimney stack where he's got him chained up, and they're going to have a bit of a heart-to-heart, I would say. Who are you? Who the hell are you? What are you doing? What the hell are you doing? Mm-hmm. And we're just going to tease out this, this aggressive at the moment relationship that they have with one another, and maybe there might be a start of a team being built here, as we heard from some of the feedback. So can't wait to see what happens in episode 3. Yes, I absolutely defend this episode of Daredevil.
Yeah, good stuff. So obviously, as we're recording this, people are caning through the episodes, but we are getting a bit of feedback in, particularly over on our Facebook group. But our first bit of feedback comes in from Rob Morgan, who plays Turk Barrett on the show. He says, "Thank you for keeping the plate warm for me. Turk Barrett fighting for his little place of of Hell's Kitchen." He says, "Glad you can dig it. If it was up to me, Turk Barrett would be in every episode."
Absolutely. We absolutely love Turk Barrett on the first season. Having watched episode 1 again now as well, I'm still there going, those poor fingers, those poor knuckles, and going, they are seriously mangled after what Daredevil did to poor Turk.
Hopefully he recovers in that month he's going to be spending in prison.
And of course, we hope that you get a sidekick as well with Grotto, that Grotto lives through this Punisher sort of track of him, and that he can join you in a life of crime in New York City.
Absolutely. We also got a little bit of feedback from Claire Laffer, who's one of the hosts of the Defenders podcast and joined us for an episode of our Agent Carter coverage. Claire says, "I've got my 5-point feedback. Clement's mention, yay. Melvin, yay. Oh God, I love this show. Oh God, I love this character. Oh God, explodes." I think you missed a few points on there, Claire, but thanks very much for the feedback. I know you're going through your 13-hour marathon session, watching all 13 episodes back to back, so that you can host your episodes of the Defenders podcast coming up from next week. Hope you're enjoying it as much as we are.
Yeah, and remember, keep hydrated and make sure you push through those moments where you need to get that extra bit of energy to watch the 13-hour marathon. You're like Eddie Izzard at the moment, doing 27 marathons in one go. This is 13 episodes back to back in one go, so keep it up.
Absolutely. And we've also had some Facebook reactions in so far, John.
Yeah, Ronaldo said, the intro to Frank is so menacing. It's just like he's this force. So fun to be back in the Daredevil world. Immediately so different from Jessica Jones. He goes, I think apart from the initial massacre of the Irish mob, it has been interesting that the violence associated with Frank Castle is only implied and minimal compared to previous Punisher incarnations on screen. In Warzone, it's over the top graphic, and Tom Jane's movie, both the film and the short, never shirk on the violence in your face. Bernthal's Punisher does all this killing off screen, or he himself is off screen, and it makes for a very menacing and deadly effect. Absolutely. I think that's one of the great things about this. And I think it links into some of the other Facebook reactions that we got from Ben and from Rebecca. Ben goes, it's a very Garth Ennis intro for Frank, and Rebecca, it was about as Ennis as you can get, with a big smile emoticon.
Yeah.
It really is, very much, seems to be taken from Garth Ennis.
Yeah, I think I mentioned that in the first podcast, yeah.
Absolutely. And as well, then just going back to Ronaldo, he also has a small note as well for episode 1. He goes, at the very beginning, he loves Daredevil taking down one of the diamond robbers in the Chinese kitchen. Then the cooks beat the crap out of the fallen robber. Kick-ass. Smiley face. Like, yeah, absolutely. It's just so sort of like, we're going to get you back. You know, we're going to take out our revenge. We're going to save our, kitchen, not the city. It's kind of really good.
Yeah, but it is like a good kind of touch of it that it is in a kitchen, in Hell's Kitchen, that the residents of that kitchen are taking it out on the robbers. I think that's quite a good little touch as well. But good call out. I remember laughing quite loudly when I watched it in the episode and then forgetting to put it into our podcast review. So good call out.
Definitely. It all seems to be about the Punisher having a huge impact on the first episode of season 2 and its introduction. Like Chris, our co-host, who was on the other side of the world, goes, I think they're saving the gore for a couple of episodes later so that when we see it, it will be a stark contrast from Daredevil's more considered approach. Maybe more cold and with military precision. Absolutely. And Will Madgwick says, I'm glad it went straight into action. I've been looking forward to it so much. That's exactly what I wanted.
Yeah, I agree, Will. It's really good to see that bit of action in there. And then finally, Little Kev says, I've had a wee binge today. All I can say is hell yeah, it is a completely different show than Series 1. Maybe a bit more the Punisher show than Daredevil. Thanks very much for that, guys. Really good to hear from everybody on their feedback as they're watching through the first couple episodes of Daredevil. With that, if you want to send us in your feedback, just send it to feedback@defenderstvpodcast.com. As I mentioned earlier on, we will be slowing down our coverage, so you will be able to get in feedback about the episodes as you watch them. You can always send in feedback about the first 2 episodes, and we will read it out on the next episode that we're going to be recording. If you want to send in feedback for any future episode, just send it to feedback@defenderstvpodcast.com and mark the episode number in it that you want to talk about. If you want to share any feedback with us on our Facebook group, just go find Defenders TV Podcast over on Facebook. You'll see a group in there. Just join us and we'll talk with you about the episodes there and share your feedback on the podcast.
Yeah, there's also Twitter @DefendersCast, so please follow us there on Twitter. But of course, as always, remember you can find us on defenderstvpodcast.com/iTunes or any other good podcast catchers such as Podcast Addict, Beyond Pod, Player FM, or Stitcher. Just search Defenders TV Podcast. Remember, subscribe, review, share, like, you name it. You do anything that's got a thumbs up, that is perfect. And of course, the more reviews we get, the more we will obviously pop up in the feeds of these podcast catchers and on iTunes. It helps other people find our podcast. So any review is really much appreciated. Thank you so much again for listening.
And of course, we'll be back in the next couple of days with our coverage of episode 3 of Daredevil season 2 and also with our coverage of Agent Carter episode 8 as well. So make sure you subscribe to the feed, as Jon mentioned, to pick up all of those episodes. Thank you so much for joining us for our podcast coverage of Daredevil. We've been really enjoying it. Hope you're enjoying the episodes too.
Yeah, thank you so much again for listening, and we'll speak to you soon. Bye.
This has been a Flickering Myth Podcast Network production. For more information, head over to flickeringmyth.com for more shows like it. Find this show in iTunes by searching for the podcast name, and head over to youtube.com/flickeringmyth to subscribe to the Flickering Myth movie show. We'll see you on the next podcast. Take care. Bye bye.